Canada's broken, and Canada's broken because we're stupid.
What?
Look inside yourself, Rosemary.
How many kids did you molest with Jeffrey Epstein?
More than just elbows.
I wanted to start off just on sort of what I've heard over the past few weeks, in particular from you and your party, criticizing the government's record on basically getting stuff done, right? How much they have or they haven't done in your view. You're critical of them for using bureaucracy in the case of this major projects office to do what, in your view, the market should do. But you also criticize them for getting nothing done. Don't you need government to expedite stuff, particularly when you're building big projects of national interest, whether through this vehicle of a major projects office or something else? Don't you need that to get something done fast?
Well, that was the expectation, that it was going to be done fast. Instead, it took 5 months to set up an office that will one day consider approving a project. And right now, we've got no projects permitted. We've got no shovels in the ground. We just have an office as our economy is in free fall, given the numbers, even just last week. Look, more bureaucracy and red tape isn't a step in the right direction, and we'll never say that it is. It's just another mechanism for the Liberals to pick winners and losers rather than letting the market decide. Like you said, the projects need to go ahead. And there are a lot of things that you can do in order to have proponents ready to invest in Canada and build these projects. And that's the exact bureaucracy that's in the way that they have set up an office, a bureaucratic office, to solve. That's things like the C-69, the legislation that makes pipelines illegal, the tanker ban off the West Coast, the emissions cap, the industrial carbon tax. There is a number of things that you need to do to spur innovation and create these conditions that you talk about, so resource projects can actually be built in Canada.
The one thing I would quickly point out, just one caveat to what you point out, like the C-69, for example, the impact assessment, it doesn't make pipelines illegal. In your party's view and in the industry's view, it sets an environment that makes it harder for a private proponent to come forward. I interviewed the Minister of Energy a few weeks ago. I put those concerns to him. I asked him whether or not they were fully going to rescind many of the things that you just listed off. And what he communicated was basically that that C5, that the new powers that affords the federal government would allow them on a case-by-case basis to override things like Bill C-69 or the emissions cap if it is in the name of a project getting built. Isn't that exactly what you're looking for?
Well, then repeal the anti-growth laws. Reward those who actually build. Protect Canadian innovation. Again, there are lots of things that you can do in order to make these conditions possible. You know, Mark Carney said the first time, the Prime Minister said that he would have a list at the First Minister's meeting, almost 5 months ago, and still there is no list. There is just an office. So we're saying there's lots of things that you can do, and that's exactly what we'll propose when we come back to Parliament in a couple of weeks, a Canadian sovereignty law that will put all of these things right on the front burner. So it signals to proponents, to industry who have also been asking for these things, to get them off the table and out of the way, and stop any of the trepidation that people have about the Canadian economy and the way that we don't build here.
And I do understand the concern where speed is relevant here, like, the pace at which this stuff is unfolding. But if you were to do everything that you said and that the Sovereignty Act, for example, lays out, get rid of the emissions cap, get rid of the industrial carbon tax, get rid of C-69, get rid of the tanker ban, well, what is left of our actions to address climate change? Like, essentially what you're advocating for is taking away everything that our country was going to do to achieve targets that we had set out to help mitigate the impacts of climate change in favor of something the government already said they'd do on a case-by-case basis rather than throw the whole baby out with the bathwater.
Look, I've said this, and everybody else has said this during the election, after the election, and Canadians know that we're in a generational crisis, and it is absolutely the time to build. These are the things that are going to allow us to get these national projects off the ground. These are the things that industry has called for. These are the things that have stopped investment in our in our country. And these are not the only things that they've moved slowly on. We still have a housing crisis. We have an immigration crisis. We have a cost of living, a youth unemployment rate that is at levels, according to CBC, that hasn't been seen or that has only been seen during recessions. All of these things are still very much on the front burner. So when we criticize the government about speed, it was them that put all of these things on the table, saying that we were going to move at a fast pace. We're 5 months in. Parliament hasn't sat. We still haven't seen a budget, although posted the largest deficit, larger than the last Prime Minister even. All of these things are going to be discussed in Parliament, but we're not going to stop pushing the government on accelerating the pace of all of their promises and all of the conditions that they set.
No, I understand that. And like I said, I get the criticism where speed is concerned. And certainly we have questions for the government in that vein as well, from the media's perspective on behalf of Canadians. But my question to you was more around, like, getting rid of your entire climate plan is a very drastic move, but you can augment the impacts, the negative economic impacts of some of the policies you mentioned on a case-by-case basis, which is what they're promising to do.
The economy and the environment aren't mutually exclusive. They never have been. We can do things in Canada by displacing the dirty dictator oil that is being bought from countries that are way worse than us. These are ways to mitigate the environment in a real way by putting Canadian workers at the forefront, by putting Canadians at the forefront, by putting our economy at the forefront, and by putting construction and manufacturing and the industries that we thrive in at the forefront, so that Canadians can take home more of what they earn and live the life that they were promised.
Hey, that's something everyone
in essence,
can
if we are doing that, let's say, for example, we take your party's proposition that we export a ton of oil and LNG to China, and we supplant, in particular with the case of LNG, their use of coal. We are therefore depending on China as an export destination to displace the United States, a country your party is very critical of any economic ties to, including, for example, loans the government has made through the whole ferry project. Like, is there not some hypocrisy inherent to that?
It is this government, particularly on LNG, this government that turned away the Chancellor of Germany, the leadership of Japan, saying there was no business case to do any more on LNG. And that could have displaced tons, again, of that dirty dictator oil that countries who are killing our own people are dependent on. It is this government over the last decade that has shut down resource development and has made it more difficult for Canadian oil and gas and LNG and all the rest to make it to markets, cleaner LNG, cleaner oil, cleaner gas, to make it to markets that would depend on it and that want it, who we have heard in the last number of weeks want it.
But respectfully, and I did those interviews with those leaders, and they all said to me, and I made public, that they wanted that LNG. My question was not about what the government is doing. My question was about your party's position, which is, we'll be able to, meet our climate change obligations by using China as an export destination for things like LNG, even though you don't want China helping to build ferries, for example. Like, is there not some inherent hypocrisy to the conservative position?
As our primary LNG export. We want to,
but you want them to buy all our oil.
We want to expand our LNG exports to people who have asked for it, to people like the Germans. Look, they built their own LNG facilities in like 190 days from start to finish. Other countries in Europe have approved theirs and will have theirs done in 6 months. We're not even on the field when it comes to a place to buy cleaner LNG from. And we can displace lots of that with other countries who want it and expand our trade relationships.
Okay, I'm going to leave it on that note. I'm out of time. I appreciate your time as always, Ms. Lantsman. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Canada's broken, and Canada's broken because we're stupid. Okay? Canada's broken because we're stupid.
As a European, I am a European, actually.
Oh, you are?
Yeah,
Oh.
Irish citizen. Yeah, so there you
welcome.
go.
Welcome.
Speaking as a European.
WTF.
Here, here. How many kids did you molest with Jeffrey Epstein?
More than just elbows.
And as the most European
of the non-European countries.
Being aware of what potential conflicts of interest you
What
sought
possible
to avoid.
conflict would you have, Stephanie? Stephanie, I'm complying with the rules. I'm complying with the rules in advance. Come on for now.
These are Muslim values. These are Canadian values.
Hi, everyone. Congratulations, you're spending more money on taxes than on food, clothing, and shelter combined.
Hey, that's something everyone can enjoy.
All right, gang, thank you all very much for watching. Aaron, Canadian Looney, like, share, subscribe. Smash that subscribe. We're trying to grow this thing. Canadian Federal Politics. Get yours right here. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next video.